welcome to ShopTalk, the podcast built to unlock union strength through collaborative discussion. Our aim is to have a naturally flowing conversation on relevant union issues, events, and topics. Thank you for joining.
Hello and welcome to Shop Talk. I'm your co-host Frank Perry.
I'm Robert Bays.
So this is going to be our first podcast beyond the candidate series. So we're going to be having a discussion today on different union topics and kind of the hottest talking points for Local 1000 today. So thank you for joining, and we've got several guests that will be joining in on the discussion today.
Yes, today we will be talking about a number of topics, which will include the recent election results that came out last week, and some hot button issues, including our involvement in politics and an emergency board of directors meeting that is being called for this coming Wednesday. As Frank said, we've invited a lot of people. It looks like we have more people coming in right now. So far, it looks like we have both Richard Brown and Annika and Kevin Managers coming in and a few people on the phone. So I imagine that we're going to be expanding as people start to trickle in. But as Frank teed up, we want to talk about the election results, our involvement in politics, and the emergency board meeting. So before we get into the election results, we wanted to talk a little bit about how we determine elections within SEIU. And so we have a history of talking about this issue on the board of directors. It's something that has come up multiple times and so we're going to pull up the policy file and see what the policy file language says on it, if we can. And so currently, the technical difficulties, if everyone can see the screen that we're sharing, it says right now that newly elected officers for statewide DBERS will install for office no later than the June 30th, unless there's an unresolved election protest. But if you look down to in general council delegates will take office at general council. And if you look at J, it says a plurality of votes cast shall determine the winner for each office. In the case of a tie, the winner shall be determined by lot. The reason that that's important is because have codified in our policy file that the way we determine who wins an election isn't by a majority vote. There isn't, a 50% plus one barrier. It's simply a plurality. So whoever gets the most votes. This has been people have attempted to amend this many times. In fact, before these last elections started, I put forth a policy file amendment that would have changed that wording on J from a plurality of votes to a majority of votes, so that we could ensure that the people, the people who are voting are representative of, our union, and that in order to win, you got to get 50% of the electorate. And so that was voted down by the board. In addition to the host just muted me, sorry. In addition to that, many times there has been a policy file amendment that's been put forth that would institute ranked choice voting. And the way ranked choice voting would work was obviously people would rank their candidates. So people who voted for, Yvonne Walker would then choose a second, who they want second, maybe Richard Lewis Brown, and third, they might have wanted Sophia, and so on and so forth. And so that ranked choice voting would then allow us to see a better picture of who everyone favored and how. And in addition to that, there was procedures that would then take instances where someone didn't get more than 50% of the vote and then have a runoff election. And that was something that the board also denied on multiple occasions. And so where we are at now and where we are at for this past election is that we have made it crystal clear that our governing body within the last year, within the last 6 months, we've made it crystal clear on multiple occasions that we want the winner of our elections to be determined by a plurality. In doing so, we have election results that came out on Friday. I will attempt to share that screen with you as well now. And let's see, election results. So here are the election results. As we can see, a total of 2,880 people cast a ballot, coming out of 51 precincts or DLCs. And we see that based on our election procedures, the winner of this election would be the person with the plurality of votes, and that would be Richard Lewis Brown with 2,637 votes, representing 33.46% of the vote. And so because of that, because we don't have any other procedures, we don't have any other, ranked choice voting, we don't have anything that says that you have to get 50% in order or more of the population. We have declared that as of now, officially as of Friday, the official winner of our election is Richard Lewis Brown for president. And so we would, at this point, open the floor. Frank, was there anything that I missed that we needed to add on that?
No, very concise.
And so I guess we'll give a first, anyone who's in this chat who disagrees with that's how our elections are determined. You can raise your hand. If I got something wrong, please do so now. Use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself. But I believe we have that correct. I think Kevin maybe is giving the nod on that we described it correctly. And so then we'll give a second to congratulate Richard Lewis Brown. Thank you for being on the call as the newly elected president. Do you have anything to say about the election procedures?
First of all, thank you, Robert. I want to have a quick question. Could you repeat the number of voters for this election that voted again?
Yes, I can attempt to share that screen again.
Because you said the number, and
seeing it says the number of ballot cast was 7,880.
Okay, you said 7,880. So my question is,
you see the screen?
Yeah, I see it. Okay. My thing is, the number of ballots returned was 7,948, and so just for statewide office, that one ballot, because some of the envelopes had more than one ballot in. So I'm kind of wondering, did really 7,880 people vote, or did only 7,000 or did 7,948 people vote? I mean, how many people actually voted in this election?
This is what we have right here, but if Kevin wants to jump in, go ahead.
What complicates these numbers, why it's really hard to parse them and make them come out as an accountant would like, but all the numbers add up to the same bottom line. The reason why that's difficult is a couple of factors. One, as I think Robert mentioned, or what you said, Richard, that some ballots had more, some envelopes had more than one ballot because you had your statewide, and maybe you had a DLC election, or you also were going to vote for a CBER. And those ballots would go in the same envelope.
Okay.
I don't know about CBER because I didn't vote on a CBER one. But anyway, those will all go in the same envelope. And then we saw those got open and they were separated after they were put with their envelopes. So that doesn't mean that each ballot that was put in there was properly marked, because there were some blank ballots that came back. Mm-hmm. That's usually posted on that list we saw as undervote. But there were some blank ballots as well, and some that were marked erroneously. There was a contention a couple of times ballots. I didn't see the actual ballot, but I could see them working on it and talking about it. I don't know if you were there for that part, Richard, where there was a cross out and they initialed it apparently, and then they marked another person. And so that had to be adjudicated and then recreated. This is where I get a little nervous, but they were there that had to recreate that ballot so it would go through the machine. So all these little technicalities of the ballots. There could be some being off on the numbers. What you said, it was 79 that was returned and 7888 was counted.
Well, from what I saw when they posted the ballot returns for the 20th, May 20th, I came out with a number of 7,948 return ballots. So we either have just one ballot in that return envelope or multiple ballots in that return envelope. When someone asked me, if I'm asked on TV how many people voted in this election, you know, in my mind, if you return 7,948 ballot envelopes, that's how many people voted in this election.
So I think obviously we'd have to talk to the elections committee probably, or the adjudicators of it. But from what I understand, the number of ballots returned is not indicative of the number of ballots cast, because you could, although say you got the number you got, 7,900 ballot or, you know, envelopes came back, but some of them might not have been signed envelopes. They might not have, you might have had a double count for president, in which case it wouldn't have counted. You know, say the only thing they voted for was president and they voted for 2 people, well, you wouldn't count that ballot at all. But if they also voted for, you know, 1 person for VP, secretary, treasurer, then you would probably, I would assume, count that ballot as a total ballot, but it just wouldn't count for that election, which is why you see all the over under numbers. But again, yeah, the election committee and all the people who are in the room, hopefully, you know, you and Kevin and everyone who are there, ask those questions before, you know, while they were.
I tried to, and well, we're on tape, so Kevin and other people,
we were there.
They witnessed the conversation.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
It's Sunday. It's Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, it is. So that's where we got those numbers. Those are the publicly available numbers, but we do hear you on terms of that. Speaking of, do you plan on like protesting because of that number, or are you just asking the question?
Well, when people ask me,
do you want more votes, or?
Well, you know, we want everybody to vote. At least I do. And that's what I ran on. And so I have to dramatically drive up membership. And this next election, if I'm actually sworn in and I don't get thrown out of office, this next election, we're going to have a massive voter turnout. That's a guarantee. And so I want to know how many ballot envelopes returned, whether they were filled out correctly or not, because it shouldn't be that hard to fill out these ballots. It shouldn't be. And if it's that hard, then there's a problem. So we got to fix all of that. So that's all I have to say.
I think Richard hit on a good point that we wanted to touch on next. But before we do that, is there anyone else have a comment on the specific number of ballots, since that's what we're talking about? If you had anything else, Kevin.
Well, I'm not sure if the numbers we get back from them was number of ballots received or number of envelopes received, because that's, again, a place where the numbers can differ a little bit. And it can get kind of confusing. And whenever there's a bit of confusion about the election and election procedures, the paranoia sets in and conspiracy theories start, and you're not sure. I'm not saying anything did happen, but we need a clearer demarcation and delineation so it's transparent and everyone knows how this happened.
Right.
Agreed.
Absolutely. And so that is something that, you know, hopefully we can, everyone on this call and all the people we're connected to can really work on over the, you know, the next several years before the next election is, you know, tightening up our procedures, making sure everything's more clear, more transparent. But what Richard kind of brought up that we wanted to kind of talk about next was Richard had just mentioned, if he gets sworn in, if he doesn't get, you know, thrown out before then. I think part of it might be, you know, I don't want to speak for Richard tongue in cheek, but also, you know, let's look at this part of the policy file. We're going to share our screen here. Election conduct. Now, election conduct 12.1.00 says that the following code of conduct shall govern all local 1,000 offices. And there's a list of things that candidates shall and shall not do while they're campaigning. And so it's possible that amongst the, and so you can read it here, we'll leave it up for a second, but obviously making judgments on consideration of race, color, sex, religion, national origin, things like that are a violation. Not saying anyone has created those violations or not, but that is in the policy file. So that would be one potential avenue where someone could protest this. Now, if we look at another section of the policy file, so what happens, we saw the conduct, what happens if you violate this conduct? And so if there's a violation to do with the president, that'll go to the vice president, secretary, treasurer for immediate review. If not, it goes to the president. And so if a protest concerns the conduct of a candidate, the candidacy of the member may be terminated. The committee may take other corrective action. The decision of the election protest committee shall be final. And so there are things in our policy file that not only speak to the nature of, you know, how our elections should be run, but also the conduct in which the people who are participating in those should adhere to, in addition to that, procedures on, you know, what the remedy was for that. And so I guess with that in mind, that's one of the avenues in which I guess Richard might be talking about. Would that encapsulate everything, or is there other things? Or
no, I wasn't referring to the conduct. It's funny that people bring that up because in the prior elections, no one's behavior or conduct was ever an issue. So I find that interesting. But, you know, it's interesting about the fact that I think Tony Owens may protest because he already put in one protest letter. And so, and I'd like to hear Kevin's opinion. The policy file states that you can protest, but your protest can be no later than June 10th. But on the key elections timeline, they put a made up date of June 1st to start the protest. Well, if you look at Tony Owens' website, when I caught the secret email and posted it on Facebook, he took that secret email about non-members becoming members, and he did a protest right then. And, you know, they could have maybe stopped the election right then. So I find that interesting. And I'm sure everyone saw some election issues, you know, some subjective and some objective. So, you know, whether Tony does it or Sophia or even Kevin or anyone, you know, who ran for statewide office may decide. Miguel may decide. Any of those people may decide. But only thing I'd simply end on this, you know, the news media is calling me. And I would find it very interesting to see if something happened to me while a lot of these people are running around talking about Black Lives Matter. See, this is what I was saying about people. You talk about Black Lives Matter, but, you know, all of a sudden you look at me kind of funny. So, yeah, find that interesting.
So on the elections protest side of things, we see that, as you mentioned, we have a period that ends June 10th. One of the election protests someone could bring up would be a conduct issue, in addition to other issues that you mentioned. And so we kind of wanted to open up the floors. We know we have a bunch of experts on here, and so we kind of want to talk the conversation. We've established, and it seemed like everyone agreed on our election procedures, how we arrived to determining that you were the winner, but we still have gray area in wondering whether or not you make it to office, right? You're saying it, a lot of people are saying it. So one avenue we just explored a little bit, what is the policy file? Is there any other avenues that people kind of see coming up? I know Kevin is very knowledgeable at this, but I know a lot of people on this call are. So what are some other things that can happen with our elections that we think we just certified on Friday? What else could happen between now and June 30th in our union in regards to elections? Any thoughts, opinions? Anyone want to opine on that?
I hesitate to voice this too much because I haven't done sufficient research. But I am concerned, and I would think it's quite possible, Richard, you would have done the research on this too, to look at the SIU International Constitution, that some of the things that you said during your campaign about splitting from the international could be deemed as a endangering the union, could be speaking ill of the union, and that could cause serious consideration of your stewardship or
Right.
of your legitimacy. So the
Yeah.
international, if
Right.
that is a violation in there, I haven't looked this
Right.
up yet. So this is just it could be kind of a thing. I don't want to give it too much weight behind this. But Richard, maybe you looked into this as to what
You-
constitutes a violation.
Yes, and I would simply say again, this whole election, everyone saw how I, ran my election. And there's a great thing in America about freedom of speech. And right now, oftentimes people in America feel like they don't have freedom of speech. It's the cancel culture. And anyone that knows me knows that I'm trying to enhance this union. So a lot of times when people talk about Local 1000, maybe they're trying to destroy the union altogether, quote, decertify the union. And no one has ever heard me say that. And so when I was offering to help people to vote, when I was offering basically to give people, hope. And, the reason why our union is so divided is because of politics. So all the things that I've said, which is very similar to what I said in 2018. So it's interesting how in 2018, I kind of said the same exact thing I'm saying now, but because I won this election, now there's a problem. And, all the opposition against Yvonne Walker, I thought the goal was to beat her, period. And so now that someone was able to beat her in an election where she controls the membership list, she's the one that knew when non-members could become dues-paying members to vote. She knows where all the dues-paying members are. She controls everything, and you cannot get access to the membership list unless you pay, and then they have to agree to what you're going to say in the literature, and then they will mail it out for you through a union print shop. So all the advantages that the incumbent has, and all these things that's been going on all these years, but now that I'm on TV after I've won this election, people are worried. And to be honest, they should be. And so what I would simply say to wrap this up really quickly is, Richard Lewis Brown is not sworn in. If you think that the media is looking now, I know where this is headed. And the more they keep fighting, the more the media is going to come. And our country is split. And for the union to retaliate against me after I won the election by someone made a false accusation. I could have lost my life that Tuesday morning on May 25th, about 5 o'clock in the morning. I could have been shot. The police gave me the utmost respect. I didn't stereotype police. And thank God they didn't stereotype Black men, at least not these two officers. Thank God. And I survived. So I survived the police stop. I'm trying to survive this election and get into office. So for me, it's always about survival as a Black man in America.
Okay, and we see that we do have Ron Rawson's hands up. We'll get to you in a second, Ron. I did want to hit on two things you just said, though, specifically, because there is a lot of talk, Richard, that and a lot of people saying that you're here to decertify the union, that's your ultimate long con, right? That this.
Right.
And then you put out videos recently since you won that said that you needed support, that there's going to be more votes coming. And so a lot of people have been taking that as saying that you're going to be putting forth a vote to decertify the union or to break from SEIU. And so I guess we just want to get, because of the division in our union and trying to quell those divisions and really heal everyone, can you give us anything in any, explicit terms that you are or you aren't, trying to decertify the union, or that you are?
So let me hold on a second. Wait a minute. Richard Lewis Brown is not trying to decertify nobody. In what you're saying, no. See, these are the lies that's being said about me. The only thing Richard Brown has ever done is give people hope and told them that we shouldn't be involved in politics. And I've been doing these videos all this time, all of these years. And when they ran that fake HR 1 charge on me, I think last year, that got thrown out. So all these fake charges that get thrown against me, and I know why they get thrown against me. And it ain't just because I'm a job steward and I'm outspoken. See, and this is why I'm calling people out for their hypocrisy. So, Yvonne Walker is having all these conversations about racial justice and everybody's up in arms talking about Black Lives Matter. But the cops were at my door and it could have blown my head off. But I didn't see you guys calling to see if I made it through. Okay. I didn't hear no calls from you to say, oh, Richard, are you okay? I didn't get no call from Yvonne Walker. But I get these questions about I'm trying to decertify the union when you know that's not the case. That's what I find very ironic. And I guarantee you, I tell you these things ahead of time, and then you people don't believe it. I told you I was gonna win the election. I did it.
So
okay?
yeah, so we just wanted.
I'm explicit in keeping this union strong and growing its membership. That's when I'm explicit. That's what I'm doing.
And like I said, we just want that cleared up, not for necessarily those people.
Well,
for me, well, you let me finish. It's just because if we are talking really honestly about bringing everyone together, then if people have those fears, whether they're just or not, it's good to answer that and put those fires out. And so that's why we're asking you, hey, you got the platform. If you want to put any of that out, say, hey, that is or isn't the case, because that is being talked about, whether we like it or not. People are saying, are saying that that's what your goal was. And so we just wanted I wanted to clear that up since you had brought it up.
Well, I hope they're talking about to see about my welfare as a union brother. That's what I hope they're really talking about. Because, from what I'm hearing about there's social justice in our union, but yet we're losing 2 days of pay for a whole fiscal year. But yet we're getting ready to rush to give this man Gavin $1 million while we have people losing their jobs up in Lassen County. So I didn't hear people from Lassen County say that I'm trying to destroy the union. Right. So it's funny how people have a way of seeing things. And when I try to educate people and tell them that your money is used on politics, period, they said I was lying. I've never lied. Because if I had been straight lying, Yvonne Walker would have me thrown out years ago. That's what I found interesting. But the minute I win this election, here you guys come. Not you, Robert, but here come the naysayers. Right. So let me address this quite clearly. I'm not going anywhere. And the union is not going anywhere. And when I take office, we're going to be transparent and we're going to be clear cut. And we're going to eliminate all this confusion about what's this and what is that.
Right. Perfect.
I want to get to,
we're going to get to Ron Rawson.
Ron Rawson. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. We're going to get to Ron Rawson right now. We are going to go. I'm going to say in the chat though, on your comment, Cindy said that she did call you. So she just wanted you to know that she did care about your well-being. But Ron, the floor is yours.
No, I was just saying, I thought that Kevin mentioned that as a hypothetical. And Richard, you were going at it as if that was an actual. He was just giving you this is shop talk. So he was just giving you the hypothetical that could become a conduct, an issue from international. So I would thank him for the heads up, and I would steer clear of anything like that moving forward, if I were you. I did call you out of concern of what I had heard with the news, two things about Black Lives Matter and about your stab at the governor. And I said, I wouldn't come in the door making enemies immediately before you even sworn in. And you seem very adamant to say, well, this is your platform, this is what you ran on, and you're going to stay loyal to your people. So it's as if you're not even taking heed to people who are trying to reach out to help you with, one of the things that important people do very early on is they may get a publicist around them, somebody who can speak for them in the media. But you need to understand, and this is one thing I told you, and I know you've been getting a lot of that over the last few days, so I want to be sensitive to that. Probably hundreds of people have called you to give you all kind of advice. So I congratulated you. I told you we're here to help you. But I like to help people who I think are hearing me if I talk, not people that are shutting out, especially because I think that we have a wealth of knowledge, and information that we all should be a village, a family. And one thing I said was, when you speak, I want to know that you're speaking for SEIU Local 1000. And I don't know if you understand that you're no longer, like my job, I'm an investigator for the state of California. When I walk into a hospital, they never call my name. they'll say states here, you know. So when I represent the state of California, I have to make sure that it's not Ron's agenda personally on the table. So when we have 50,000 something people and you speak and you say something, I want to know that you are my voice, okay, are the voice of the union and not just your own. So we have to make sure that we understand that when you have a powerful position such as you have, like Biden, he's the president of the United States. He can't talk just out of what he believes as a person. You know, he has to talk out of, for us, when he goes to China or whatever, we have an ambassador over there, they represent us. So I just wanted you to know that, nothing more than that. And I thought what Kevin said and some of the things that Robert posted as to potential policy file violations, I thought that was it's just good that we're having this conversation. And you're right, you're not sworn in yet. You do have freedom, First Amendment rights and that, but you know, I would be very careful. That's all I have to say on it.
Yeah, I think it's important, some of those points you brought up, Ron, but it's also important to understand the reality that whoever is your leader of the union or your leader of the president of the United States is you're not always going to see 100% eye to eye with their comments or with the positions they take. This is why we see comments like, but you know, people saying Biden isn't my president, because not everyone agrees with them. But at a certain point, solidarity should become an issue, and sticking together, just, and you know, recognizing that you're in a union and that your leader is who it is going to be for the next few years, same as our president of the United States. So
yeah,
you're not always going to agree with your leader, and it's not when you don't agree with them, when you disagree with them, it's not a reason to say, well, now I check out, you know, because we need solidarity within our union. That we're going to end this little conversation right here, and we're going to move on with some.
This is Jerry Fisher. I want to make a quick. This is Jerry Fisher. Richard, you and I don't know each other, but I come from 746 on Unit 1 Deber. And I want to tell you that I agree with Ron's statement that it seemed like it was something that needed to be talked about. This is, in some ways, from my perspective, something in your favor. If we come to some consensus with you about how to respond to the same questions that you might get, then we're stronger. And I hope that we go forward like that. I know that you might be feeling like you're on the hot seat right now, but as I know the people that are present in the room and myself, we are ready to work with you. We just have to go through some tough territory, and I bid you every success, and that we begin now and carry forward unified. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yes, and that was Jerry Fisher. Thank you. The reason we didn't get to call on her, she's only on the phone, and so there is no raise hand feature, unfortunately, for her. But we do appreciate everyone else raising their hand. We do see that Kevin has his hand raised. As Frank said, we do kind of want to move on. We do still have, our involvement to politics and the emergency board meeting to talk about in depth. And so if it's about either of those things, please hold off, Kevin. But if it has specifically to do with the election results and the protest period, please go ahead and unmute yourself and speak. Like I said, we're just going to get to to involvement in politics and the emergency board meeting and
a little bit
all
about
all
the
of
election.
that. So we want to save that if it's that portion for then.
Just a clarification on a little bit about the election. And speaking about freedom of speech, that's a constitutional guarantee of the federal government's protection against the federal government to do that. Within the confines of the union election, that's not necessarily going to play there because they can make restrictions on that. And some of the things that were said, actually some of the things you said about me personally that I take offense to, unfounded, those were violations. However, I'm not a candidate. I was not a candidate for president, so I cannot protest those things. Something that was not brought up in the protest period is that only the candidates for those races can raise the protest. So if anyone has an issue with President-elect Brown going in, it would have to be Sophia or Miguel or Tony or Yvonne. Those are the only ones who could do that. That's so anyone else had a problem issue, you're kind of out of luck. That's the way it's defined in the policy file.
Yes, and we are going to share that screen one more time. What he's referring to is that first sentence: a candidate for that office may file a protest. And so that's what Kevin's referring to when he's saying that only a couple people can file a protest against, because it has to be someone from that office. So as you all see right there. And so thank you for those comments, Kevin. Like I said, we are going to lower your hand and we are going to move on. So we wanted to move on to the next topic about involvement in politics. It seems to be a very hot button issue right now. I know it's one that many candidates have campaigned on. I know that it seems to be one of the more divisive things in our union. Should we be involved in politics? Should we not be involved in politics? Should we be somewhere in between? It was a very contentious issue amongst the election and the different candidacies. And so we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that. One thing we wanted to talk about was the difference between advocacy and politics. And so when people talk about should we get out of politics, I think that further divide that into advocacy versus politics. And what I mean by that is some examples of being involved in advocacy that our Local 1000 has taken in the past were things like AB 840, which was the Nurses and Patient Safety Act, which was designed to prohibit overtime for nurses. They also were involved in AB 874, which is Judicial Council Representation, which was written to allow Judicial Council employees to unionize. So a pro-union thing. There was AB 769, which was the Adverse Action Investigation Deadlines, which was designed to streamline civil service employee discipline process. As opposed to having an infinite timeline, it reduced it. And then SB 1234, the California Secure Choice Retirement Savings Program, which was designed to create a supplemental retirement savings program for public employees. And so those are all examples of advocacy. And then examples of actual politics is political endorsements that we've done. We have a history of, dating back to 2000, 11, 12, 13, 14, giving at least $1 million to different candidate PACs, and supporting other ballot measures, obviously, as well as things like supporting governor's races. And so I think here, at least, at ShopTalk, we think that there is advocacy and there is politics. When people say we want to get out of politics, do they mean both? Or do they mean, do we only want to get out of the endorsement of candidates? But we should still be advocating for things, as I mentioned, like AB 874, which allowed Judicial Council employees to unionize. Should we be spending our money advocating for things like that? And so if we have any, let me see, look at the chat real quick to make sure nothing's in there. And then is there any hands up if anyone wants to talk about specifically? We want to open the floor up to anyone who wants to talk further about the difference between politics and advocacy, and if they think there is a difference or if they think that they are the same. Anyone, raise your hand.
Well,
go ahead.
I can note that I believe it's a precedential semi-landmark case that we won thanks to the efforts of the late DLC President Jim Halberstadt. He had a proposition, it may have been a no on 32 flyer on his cubicle. This is advocacy. It is a proposition. It's nonpartisan, and management wanted him to take it down. He argued this is not nonpartisan politics. I get to keep it up. We fought that. We won. He was able to keep that up. And so this is why on our union bulletin boards, we can't put on partisan stuff up there. vote Democrat or vote Libertarian, vote Republican, but we can have, I guess we'll call it advocacy of propositions, nonpartisan. Even though we call it nonpartisan, but we know Dems generally support this kind of proposition, Republicans generally support this kind of proposition, but strictly speaking, they're nonpartisan, and we can get our money behind that. I was surprised to learn, to bring a bit more closer to home here, that the recall of the governor is considered an advocacy, an issues-oriented political action. To me, it's a candidacy action. Whenever you vote for or against a candidate, that seems like it'd be a candidate action, and a recall is clearly a vote against a individual person. But legalistically, and I'm told that it is an issue-oriented proposition. So we can put and this is important because that's what you can put dues money behind. You can't put dues money behind partisan, but you can behind advocacy. And so this is a very salient point you bring up, Robert, to differentiate those two here.
So we still have you on the floor, before other people chime in, what is your opinion on it in terms of our union, given today's climate, where we're at, where we're going? Should we be involved in advocacy, politics, neither or both?
First of all, I think we are involved in politics, whether we want to be or not. Even saying we're not in politics, and I'm going to call you on this, Mr. Brown, saying we're not going to be political, but I want to get his ass out of here. That's a political statement. Saying we're not going to support the opposition to the recall, that is a political statement. So to say we're not political is kind of silly, because no matter what we do as state workers, our actions they affect politics one way or another, and politics affects them. The saying that's kind of tired is either you're at the table or you're on the menu with regards to politics. And so we might as well have some influence on that. That being said, we cannot blanketly support Dems straight up and down the line, because they take us for granted and they just ignore us, as this governor did with the damn PLP and everything else we had to go through right there. We know we can't support them blindly. They have to earn our support. Furthermore, we can't be just Dems only, because there's some counties in the state that are going to be Republican no matter what. Let's find some labor-friendly Republicans. Look at the closing proposed in Susanville, the prisons up there. That is a political action. A politician makes that decision. So if we're going to get involved with that, we're getting involved with politics. And these are Republicans generally up there. If you see the signs around there, they're generally Republicans. And we still should have a voice, even though we're a liberal Labor Party. These are our people, and we owe them our support.
Thanks for that. If anyone else wants to say anything on that, your opinion on that, raise your hand, please. But we definitely, those were good examples. We appreciate the breakdown of that. It looks like Cindy has her hand up. Go ahead, Cindy. Cindy Doyle.
Yeah, hi, how are you guys? So the tough part about this is yes, it would be great if we didn't have to be involved in politics, but the hard part with this is, because we are state workers, we are different than all other unions, because our bosses are politicians, and we can either help get them in or out of office, or they can sign our paychecks or make sure our paychecks actually get paid. So it's a catch-22. It'd be great if we didn't have to be involved in politics. Unfortunately, if we want our governor to sign our damn, bill that gets us our contract, that gets us our pay increases or our benefits or whatever, we unfortunately have to find a way to work with them. Whether or not we help contribute to their policies, their procedures, or even their candidacy, yes, it should be limited and it shouldn't be over the top. And it should be no different than we would hand anybody else we actually endorse as a candidate either. So it can be a catch-22 for us as state workers because of that, which makes it even more difficult, because who do you decide on who you back? Do the union members get an opportunity to have their say? Do the board of directors have their right to have a say? Or is it just the COPE committee who has a right to say? Technically, the entire board of directors should have a right to say who, yes or no, we agree to back that person, and yes or no, we agree to hand them whatever amount of money. So the hard part with this is what's been happening over the last many years, actually. The committees that actually are supposed to determine who we actually hand money to or who we endorse has not been necessarily shared with the board of directors, which is entirely wrong. And we have a fiscal and financial responsibility as the board of directors to actually say where money goes and have accountability to make that happen. So, and some of the last several meetings, we've had to actually almost scream and yell to say, I want to see the list, because the committee that actually is supposed to be doing all of this, they've not necessarily been sharing a list, but they still ask the board to actually vote on it. So it's taken a lot of fighting back, I guess you could say, in order to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not voting on any of this until you show me the list that we're actually supposed to be voting on and what amounts and who we're backing. So it's been quite the challenge to try to actually even just get that.
So real quick before you end, Cindy, in a short way, do you think we should be, I guess, more involved in politics, less involved, or just the same but more appropriate? Like, what would be a synopsis of what you're saying?
The synopsis would be, we have to be careful on what waters we tread, no matter where we go. The short version of this is, yes, we have some things we should do in order to show that, yes, we support various topics and agendas, because we as a union have a direct effect on what happens to our pay and our contract. But at the same time, we can't go so overboard that we're involved in everything. We can't be involved in everything. Our members matter. And not only our members matter, but their lives matter, and our communities that directly affect our members matter. So that would be my best summary for that.
Thanks, Cindy. And we see that we have a hand up from the 510 number. Again, I believe that was Jerry Lee, and I'll ask you to unmute now.
Yes, that's me. I'm just getting unmuted here again. Cindy, thank you for your comments, particularly the last part. I'm really on that page with you, and I think a lot of others are. Richard, I think some of the problems that go on with the constituency, our membership, is that they are not given enough information to see what the real core of the political issues are. They don't know. They just are responding to the, what do you mean you're giving money to politics and to politicians? And I think that you have brought up something that has long needed to be daylighted and talked about, and have some really important conversations with our memberships. I think that it would only make us more effective as a union, whether we decide that we don't want anything to do with politics, even though it might not be in our best interest, but nevertheless getting the membership much more involved. And I think one of the ways to do that is going to have to do with all of this nice virtual computer stuff that we all have. It gives us the chance to be more in touch with people. And I urge us to examine the why the membership said don't want to spend money on politics, because there wasn't room for that on the ballot. They just had to make a decision, yes or no. Thank you for letting me make a comment.
Thank you. And next up, we're going to go, since Kevin spoke on this issue, we'll get to you in a second, Kevin. We'll go with Ron first on this specific issue that we're talking about.
Kevin. No, I was just saying that we should, I think that for me, politics in the union is a sore subject because of how we've handled it in times past. I think the COPE was a matter that our former administration used as a tool to say whether you're a good member or a bad member, and they use COPE against you. Um, and so for that reason, I'm very rebellious in this subject. I think that politics is twofold. It's multifaceted, but two major folds that we bring to politics. I put on our chat earlier in the United Members for Change today, and I think that's both votes, the number of votes we bring to the table, and also our money. So I don't think, and I think with each, they need to be leveraged. I don't think we should be in a place like this upcoming, and I know you have that on the agenda later for the emergency board.
Yes.
meeting. But I think we should be in a place where things are pretty much, politics should be, a thing that is aiding our union somehow. So somehow, I don't know if we've got our bang for our buck, is what I'm trying to say. In times past, I don't know if our supportive people have gotten us anywhere as a union. In some cases, I feel like the people we supported turned their backs on us. So I don't really see the benefit, and as a union, to really be supportive of candidates that are not going to say what they're going to do to help the working class. And that's all I have to say on that.
Thanks, Ron. And Ron brought up a great point I'll get to. I don't want to cut Kevin off again, but you hit something that we have some share screens on in a second, which was the bang for the buck. So remind me to get back to that, but we'll go to Kevin real quick first.
I know I've been talking a lot. I'd never answered your question about the level of involvement. So I wanted to give my answer to that. And it's what I've said for a long time is the primary reason for a union to exist is to negotiate and defend a contract. Full stop. Everything else is subsidiary to that. But one of the subsidiary arenas to that is politics. So there is a necessity to be involved. But like Ron was saying, the way we've done it in the past is it's been steamrollered over our members. And we need to have more member involvement. I would even like to explore the idea of requiring like a 60-40 approval before COPE would approve a candidate, not just a 51%. We want to see a better majority. So if we're going to put money on something, it truly represents what the members want to do. I don't like that we're steamrolling over a contingent of our members. And if we can't come to that, then we have a no position on it. And that would be okay because our people will still vote and they can still go out and support the candidates and we can provide them the information on how to do that. But as a union, we have to stand for our members as a union together. And if we can't get a supermajority, I'm not comfortable going political.
Thanks, Kevin. And before, I don't see any other hands, but that's perfect because we did want to kind of get into something since politics matter, right? That's the debate. Does politics matter or don't politics matter? We just heard, from several of you, several issues. So we kind of went back and looked at what has happened we've been backing candidates for a while. So we wanted to look at, well, politics matter. Let's look from 2011. That was when we have had a Democrat in office since January 2011, starting with Jerry Brown. And so we wanted to look at what is our inflation since then? And so if we look here, we pulled from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the CPI inflation calculator. There's many ways to calculate things like this. We could argue till we're blue in the face, but this is a government site and we'll go with it for our purposes. $100 in January 2011 is equivalent to $121.27 in April 2021. So in that 10-year period, we see that the CPI, or the average, consumer price index, was up 21.27%. And so in that same time frame, we wanted to then say, okay, well, that was when the Democrats have taken office. That's where we're at now. let's look at some other figures. So we wanted to look at minimum wage. And so when we pull up minimum wage, we see that minimum wage since 2011 period has gone up. And that minimum wage increase is, I believe, about 30%, 37%, over 37. So a little over 37% since 2011. So in the last 10 years, minimum wage has gone up a little over 37%, which is great. People, that's obviously important to people's families. And then we also wanted to look at the legislator salaries. And so we pulled legislator salaries. We see that this is done actually by commission. You can look at some of the increases there, but essentially legislator salaries went up about 21% since 2011. So specifically, if we want to talk about the governor's pay, since that's kind of the hot topic person we like to talk about, governor's pay in January 2011 was $173,000 a year. Now it's $209,000 a year, which is that close to 21% pay increase we see. You can kind of see the breakdown here. Happy to share links with anyone who wants that. So we basically, looking at those things, we're saying, okay, so we've had, minimum wage go up over 37%. We've seen the CPI, or the basket of goods, go up over 21%. We've seen governor's pay go up almost 20%. And so then we decided, okay, let's we know a bunch of people in this union. We know a ton of people who know a lot about the union. And so we messaged people, some of which are on this call, some of which are not, asking, hey, what has our pay increase been since 2011? And what we found out is that no one can really cleanly answer that question. It is so convoluted that not a single person gave us a definitive answer. And that's not to call anyone out. It's to say that when you add in, the increases we've gotten, and then we decrease because of, putting into this fund, retirement fund, healthcare funds, we get stipends, we got a $2,500 stipend. So there was no clean answer that anyone could give us, but Frank put together something, I believe, and kind of a breakdown, the best of our abilities. And so this might not be completely accurate. You all might challenge it a little bit. We can explain the assumptions behind it. But out of all the people we contacted, of the hundreds of years of SEIU experience combined that we try to tap into, no one could really produce a clean answer because it's that convoluted. Anyways, Frank.
Okay, so here we're looking at a document I put together. As Robert said, during 2011 is when we saw a Democrat who SEIU Local 1000 supported took office. The 2010 to 13 contract, there was a 0% general salary increase over the life of that contract. The second PLP took place during 2012, so when there was a Democratic governor that we supported, and that was a PLP side letter for about 5%, which was 1 day per month throughout the year. So if you looked at it, so the next full contract we got under the Democrat was 2013 to 2016. That was 4.5%. Over 3 years, it was 0%, 2%, and then 2.5%. The next one was 2016 to 2020, and that was an 8% GSI. That was 0%, 4, 3.5, but it was OP. The retiree healthcare benefits took out 1.2%, 1.1%, and over the life of the contract, the net was down from 11.5 to 8%. Now we know, going up to the present day, we're 1 year into a contract that has essentially been voided. We got a 0% GSI last year under Governor Newsom. The way Robert and I calculated around where we try to get a number of what has been our GSI since 2011, so we can compare it to the numbers that he just shared with you. And we compounded the totals we received each year minus the OPEB contributions, and we compounded it, which brought it to about 14.5% over that time frame. I want to note that we didn't count the final OPEB retiree healthcare contribution because it technically didn't take effect, which was supposed to be the final 1.2%, but everything else that we've received has been counted in that, with the exception of that $2,500 signing bonus when we got 0% in 2016. So the number that we're looking at is 14.5% compounded general salary increase over the last decade.
Plus the $2,500, which there's no clean way for us to calculate what percentage that equates to. Thanks for sharing that. And let me make sure. So that was kind of what we wanted to see. We wanted to see, and it is, we still don't have a clean answer because we do have the 14.5% GSI, which we can compare to the legislator salaries going up 21%, which we can compare to, minimum wage going up over 37%. But there still isn't a clean way to then put the $2,500 in there. So the best answer we can give you is 14.5% since 2011 with a $2,500 stipend.
And I also want to make a little point too, in case anyone wants to ask, we're not counting special salary adjustments for one classification, or there was a contract 2010 to 2013 where it was 0% GSI and PLP days for 2 of the 3 years. There was a salary increase for top earners. We're not counting things like that. We're talking just general salary increases, not, oh, this IT class got 1% more this year or that year. And also want to add a little addendum to, Robert was giving you the source on calculating inflation prices. That was a federal inflation price. If we're probably even farther behind, considering California inflation usually grows at a much more rapid pace, including commodities such as housing and energy as well, are typically higher than any other state. So just take that into consideration, that inflation number of 21.5% or whatever it was is probably significantly higher in California, maybe 5, maybe more.
Yeah, and the reason we kind of wanted to think about it this way is to add to the conversation. When we talk about politics mattering, is what we just presented right now proof that, hey, we need to be involved in politics because we would get way less than that if we wouldn't have been involved this whole time? Or is it proof that, hey, see that all this involvement in politics, we're still behind every measure, but we're still behind the legislatures, behind minimum wage, behind inflation? Or is it somewhere in the middle? But we think that, having that kind of information hopefully will add context to people, maybe have us all view things in a different light. And so we wanted to reopen and retake some hands and kind of see what people's thoughts are on what was just presented right now. It looks like the first hand we got is Cindy Doyle.
Hi. Okay. So just an FYI, Robert, you only asked me a couple hours ago to get you the information regarding what our increases were in the state salary and our state contracts. Technically, I just emailed it to you. I've actually been tracking it since 1991. And it's actually shown a plus or a minus depending on whether or not we had PLPs or furloughs or whatever. And if you actually took the CPI index from 1991 to today, it's like a 58.82% increase in our cost of living versus what we had back in 91. And we've only had actual increases of a net over 29 years and this is an actual net of 10.57%. So that means we're behind by almost 48%.
Yeah, and that's an interesting way to, if you could not, I'm going to mute that person. Sorry.
Anyway.
Oh, no, go ahead. No,
I wanted to make sure you got that. I
don't have it yet.
I sent it to your EEC email that you sent it to. So
I'll
And I'm
have
happy to share it with Frank if you need to, but I've been, I
Yeah,
only put from it's through 2017. It shows to 2020. I haven't added this next contract onto it yet, but I'm happy to share it because I made sure that we've been tracking it that long to show the reason why members need to be members so that we can have more power at the bargaining table to get stuff done.
Right. And it sounds like you could share it with us. We could, if you have it on your screen, you can share the screen. It does sound, though, based on that low of a number, that when you're talking net, you have different assumptions than we did. Namely being when we're talking. So for example, when we did the PLP, although it's a 9.2% decrease, we didn't really count that as a pay cut because technically it's an exchange. And so we are being forced against our will to buy time.
I'm happy to share it if you'd like me to.
But we didn't count that as a pay cut. We just counted that as a net zero. And so that's probably why our figure was a little bit higher than yours. And then with a compounding, but yeah, you can share it. You can share the screen if you have it readily available right now.
I do have it right now. Do you have?
Let me see if
Here we go. Hang on. You have to let me.
Yeah. I'm trying to.
Well, yeah, her net is based against measuring it against the consumer pricing, the index, whereas we're just giving straight numbers of this is our GSI over 10 years. This is inflation nationally over 10 years. This is.
Okay, so when you go, can you guys all see this now?
Yeah, we can just look at it real quick.
Okay, so these are actual contract increases in this column. These are the budget years we're talking about, okay? So when I started doing this, I went back this far because I wanted to be able from 2008 and 9 when Schwarzenegger gave us those 3 days furloughs and we had so many 31 people committed suicide, the state workers wise. Because they lost everything, I was determined to get some factual numbers. So when you go through and start looking at this, we're talking about the nets when we went through and actual contract increases versus what actually was rounded up or down. So, and then this is a CPI index back from 91. So you could see it right across the board, exactly what this is all looking like. So I just emailed this to you, Robert, so you could have this and then add to it from there. 2010, we had our contract had this much, but then we had all these other things happen. So when you go through and look at each of these items, you can see that there was no furloughs during a certain time frame and what each things were. We had 15,000 layoffs in 11-12. Then we had more furloughs. That's actually added up to quite a bit. So each of these things have to do with what the contract had versus what our pay increases were versus what our health care premiums were, how far they went up. So these are all the net things that went through. So when you look at these grand totals, you can see what our increases were versus what our net was, what the CPI index was. So these are the nets when you go through and look since 1991.
Sweet. Well, we appreciate you sharing that, and you'll probably be willing to I'm going to have you stop. If you could stop sharing your screen.
So yeah,
if you want to email that to anyone. If anyone needs that, throw it in the chat. If you want her, we can also forward it too. It is different. I don't want to let Frank go, but I think that you showing that is very important because that reifies the point. As I said before, it wasn't a call out to say, hey, no one had anything to get to me. It actually, I think, highlights that it's so complex that we came up with different numbers, and we still don't have an actual figure versus what we showed you is very easy to find. Anyone can go and find the unemployment rate and how much unemployment insurance went up in a minute or two. Anyone can go and find out these government salaries in a minute or two, the legislator salaries. So all of these things are very easy to find. And for us, as you can see from your spreadsheet, it's very complicated.
Right.
So go ahead, Frank.
Yeah. So thanks, Cindy. We're probably going to move on to other speakers after. It's a different methodology you shared with us, but it kind of helped us reiterate our point and make it stronger, is that we're clearly, by any way you look at it, any methodology, very far behind. And we've continued to just kind of lose the amount of money we make. So the question goes back to what Robert posed. Is this indication that we need to be more involved in politics, less involved in politics, change our approach? Because by any measure, we've lost a lot of money and we've fallen very far behind. So we're going to go, the next person we're going to go to is we're going to go to Kevin.
We're actually, real quick before we get to Kevin, if it's okay, I know that people on the phone can't raise their hand, and Jerry Lee's been trying to unmute herself for a while. So we'll ask her to unmute real quick and then we'll go to Kevin. Go ahead, Jerry Lee. I believe she did. You unmuted a few times. All right, well, we'll get back to her then. Well, yeah, we'll go back to her then. Go ahead, Kevin.
If Jerry Lee, you unmute, I will yield the floor to you when you get back on. When we're looking at comparing for CPI, I think, and Robert, you alluded to this, and then I think Richard wants to get on too, that the PLPs, the use call on exchange, I say that it shouldn't be figured in because, not to call you out, Cindy, but you never added them back in because those they were taken away, yes, but they were also put back in and negated at the end of that contract, end of that PLP period. I did not see that reflected in your chart there. So that's going to add us back about 30% of that 58 that's missing. So we're still under, but we just try to make the numbers mix. And this is why, again, reiterating what Robert's saying, it's kind of convoluted. Yeah, if you send it to me, I do want a copy of it and I'll update it, because you used to have a really great graph of that too, that showed CPI and our salaries and it matched them together. That was very useful. And also, as far as your question, Robert, about politics, if we're getting our bang for a buck, it does factor into this, but let's be careful about causation versus correlation here.
100%.
Okay, so it's really hard to draw any strong conclusions, but we do sense there is a relationship there, and we have to, how do we navigate that? And is Jerry Lee, you ready to come on yet? Or if Ron is up next?
Go ahead, Ron.
No, no, I had my hand raised for Jerry Lee, who was, yeah, I don't know where she went, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we were trying to get to her. So,
but I also had a question when you asked about the 11-year look back as to the people that you queried. How many of them did you query people that have had tenure with the state since 11 years? And
yeah, we were able to find the numbers, and we kind of gave you our methodology of how we found. But our GSI was about 14.5% compounded. And once again, like Robert said, there's an exchange that happens in the PLPs, so we didn't count that. It gets a little murky, like Kevin was talking about, like when do you add those back in? How do you account for that over a decade time period? So it's what we thought was a really fair and accurate number is 14.5% over that 10-year time span. Can you once again, Robert, for the sake of conversation, remind everyone once again the percentage increase for the state legislators, the governor, and how much minimum wage has gone up, and also in federal inflation, if you could. So we're at 14.5% for our GSI over a decade. What were the other ones?
And then, so minimum wage was up over 37%, 60% since 2003, but 37% since the 2011. The governor, including all state legislatures, like I said, theirs is done by commission. And so theirs has increased a little over 20%, between 20 and 21%. And then, as we talked about, the CPI nationwide has gone up. What was that 21.27 or whatever it was number. Okay. And so as was pointed out by Kevin, that they're definitely not trying to say that there's any causation and that this means anything, but we think it's important to have those facts when we're talking about what is the efficiency that we've operated under thus far, and do we need to change something. And so I think that those were important. I saw that it looks like Jerry Lee unmuted again. So are you here?
Yes, I am. just a little bit of phone problem. I thought it was very interesting that those furloughs weren't counted as a deduction in salary. And I want to say, listen here, folks, we need the take-home money, not an extra day off. If we could find more work to do, we would go do more work to supplement our salaries. There are a lot of people that are just on the lower rung, and they're hurting. Taking 2 days worth of salary, I mean, they're searching and they're not having time with their families because they got to find that money to make up, food on the table and gas to get to work. So be really thoughtful when you calculate what you think is a politically fair or professionally fair thing. I feel really strong about this. It's really been hard on all of us. I'm a staff services analyst, and for the first time in my life, because I live in the Bay Area, I am considered low income. I'm not anywhere near middle, I'm low. Remember that we had that study done, and it showed that different parts of California had high income. So when you're using an average, we're really getting hit hard in these high expense areas. I think I've made my point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely all are state workers, and all of us, when we look at our checks and our bank accounts, we definitely consider the PLPs a pay cut because that is what it is. We were really open with our methodology of how we tried to calculate the number. But what I will say is that we can allow that devil's advocacy and say, okay, the 14.5% number is probably a lot lower than if you're someone who considers the PLPs a cut, right? So you can consider our GSI over that 10-year time span then as less than 10% then if you're one of those people that really want to count the PLPs. We want to use those numbers. We don't want to create an argument now or some philosophical debate over how we got that number. It was a starting point to move the conversation along of, are we getting bang for the buck with our dollars?
Thank you.
Should we be continue to be putting money into politics? Should we give a governor, maybe we're moving into this next, but should we give a governor that's cut our pay 10%, wiped out a GSI, should we give him $1 million more? That's what we are using the methodology to kind of create this conversation over how much should SEIU Local 1000's political involvement should be, considering you're probably someone like who is calculating those. It's been less than 10%, while we see legislators get in the 20s, minimum wage go up about 40%, while inflation goes up 21% nationally and probably closer to 30% in the state. So if anyone has any arguments and wants to talk specifically about political involvement resulting in the light of us making peanuts, that's where we want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate all of the feedback from everyone thus far. Like you said, we wanted to add to the conversation in terms of our involvement in politics. And I know that there are still people who are on this call who haven't really said anything about their involvement in politics. We wanted to get a poll going, but it's unfortunately not working too cleanly right now. And so, yeah, it looks like that if there's anyone else who wants to chime in about politics and our involvement in politics and kind of putting anything, go ahead right now. And if not, I will start to transition. And so when we talk about, it looks like Kevin raised his hand. So go ahead, Kevin.
I had to unmute the thing. Just real briefly, I had a call into our CFO because another aspect of this about what it's cost us, we talk about what it's cost our members, and that's where the rubber hits the road. But from a union leadership standpoint, I have a call into our chief financial officer before he retires. I want to know what these PLPs for this last year cost our union in reduced dues revenue. I suspect it's probably more than $1 million. It doesn't affect everybody, because if your PLP puts you down below, I think about $6,600, then we collected less from you. But above that, then we get the $90 cap, so it did not affect that. But for all those people making less than that, we had less revenue coming in. And over the year, that adds up. And so in my thinking, I think we gave it the office, the money from our members there. The union did. But that's another aspect of it, is how it affects the union, not just the members too, but our ability to organize.
Yes, thanks, Kevin. And so involvement in politics, to wrap kind of this up a little bit, it is, as we talked about, a hot button issue. We've heard from some of you all. I'm sure you've heard from many members that you represent throughout the state. I know I have in the last several months. And so basically we did have, and we didn't get to hear from Richard. He hasn't spoken up, and you can now if you want, Richard, while you're on the phone or while you're on the line. But Richard campaigned, about getting out of politics and about how we should remove ourselves from politics. And he's done that for years, as we've talked about. But after winning, it's become an especially poignant issue, to where, the media, the news media, as Richard described earlier on the call, has, pulled, not only interviewed him and gotten current thoughts from Richard, but also looked at past videos and stuff. And we see that, immediately amongst, after being announced the winner, there's news media about RLB saying that we need to run his ass out in regards to Gavin Newsom. And so that has then kind of taken a life of its own. Really, the fire is more ignited than ever as a result of those comments, which spurred SEIU California to come out, which is a larger organization over all the SEIUs. They came out and immediately after Richard Brown was on air said, hey, we support Gavin Newsom to fight this recall. And then right after that, we got a board of directors notice to say, hey, we wanted to put something on the agenda and create an emergency meeting that's going to be taking place this coming, sorry, I'm also trying to multitask, this coming Wednesday. And that emergency meeting is going to have a motion heard about our involvement in politics. So essentially, as I said, SEIU California came out, and then one of our board members, Stephen Alari, petitioned the board. And so we will be hearing a motion that is it sharing on the screen?
Yeah, now it is.
Yes, I mean, a motion is sharing. This is actually the amendment. So the original recommended action was that Local 1000 Board of Directors oppose the recall of Governor Newsom and authorize $1 million to the SEIU State Council to oppose the recall. And so this was spurred because of, like I said, the comments that our president-elect made. I then I wanted to do basically an amendment to this agenda item to say that Local 1000 Board of Directors maintains no position on the recall, and that Newsom recall of Governor Newsom, and authorize $1 million to the Local 1000 Strike Fund. Just because I think that a lot of members that I've heard over the last several months have voiced their favor for a strike fund. Another way I think that we could reword this, and I would love to see someone put an amendment as well to say, and maybe I'll do another one if they let me, which I don't know that Yvonne will let me do too, but to say to give the $1 million to 1,000 of our members. I mean, why not give 1,000 members $1,000 versus giving $1 million to a millionaire? But so the kind of the background, we've already put considerable time and effort to get him elected. And, this, that, and the other, you can kind of read it there. I don't want to get too down into the politics about it, but the recommended action is to vote yes to support this action and give confidence to the membership that elections matter. And I think that it's particularly important that, and I guess kind of my thing on this whole emergency recall, and the reason I'm sharing this position with you that I have, is that I don't think, since SEIU California has already endorsed Newsom and is putting their weight behind this, and there's already a lot of money, and Newsom's already polling upwards of 60% to win the recall, I don't think that there is our $1 million and our, kumbaya support is going to move the needle, so to speak, in any sort of way that to churn the election, I guess. But what I think it would do is I think it would cause further division amongst all of us in a time that we really should be coming together. And so that's not to say that, let's get out where this isn't a decision on whether we should get out of politics completely, as we all just had an opportunity to discuss, but more of, do we need to take a position on this issue at this time in our history? And I think that that's kind of the conversation that I think is important personally is this the right time, the right place, the right moment for us to be taking a position that is, in my opinion, really inconsequential, and in some people's opinion, very consequential. And so we wanted to open the floor up on that and say, on the emergency board meeting, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Should we give support to Newsom? Should we give him $1 million? You can kind of say that those are separate issues. And what past support, have we given him? What has that done? So kind of wanted to open up that line of conversation, and we will get to the hands, but since Richard's kind of name has been invoked amongst this, I'll give Richard the opportunity.
Can I just make a clarification real quick? Because I want to kind of set the record straight. So you had commented that state council had kind of reacted to what Richard said. And I just kind of wanted to set the record straight. And I had already talked to Richard about it, but state council reached out before their official, our vote at the state council level was actually done before Richard's comments. So they wanted to make it very clear whether or not, the genuineness is there. But I was contacted because they wanted to make sure that Richard did not feel like that was a direct reaction to what he said in the media. That decision had been made, I want to say 1 to a week and a half ago, when state council had did a vote already. So just to throw that in the mix and make sure that we were being accurate with the information, they did call and want to make sure that Richard did not feel like it was indirect response to what he said publicly.
We appreciate that clarification, and I didn't mean to misspeak that they made that decision then, but they decided to go public with that information.
Exactly. The announcements was calculated right immediately following when the comments came out by
Richard. Or just the most insane amount of time. Unlucky. I just, that's hard, but maybe. But yeah, like I said, I appreciate you clarifying that, Annika. I didn't want to misrepresent that they all met as a result of Richard's comments, but it did seem that there was some sort of correlation between the timing of how everything went down. But again, we'll give the floor to Richard. If you wanted to say anything, you don't have to, but just since obviously your name was kind of tied to this a little bit, if you wanted to say anything now, please do.
I've been sitting here and I've been enjoying the conversations. And, at this point, it doesn't really matter what I say. I'm all over Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There's a track record. It's on YouTube. It's on my website, createexcellence7437.com. I need a brochure. I say what I mean what I say. That's all that I have to add.
Thanks, Richard. And then it looked like we had Mary's hand. So Mary.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I believe that, yes, we do have to be involved somewhat in politics, but I appreciate the stance. I'm just going to be very candid. I think this is 2 questions. Number 1, do we want to be involved in politics? I think the timing of this emergency meeting is inappropriate. I can tell you, because the members don't get to speak or voice on it, a lot of membership that we currently have do not support Gavin Newsom. They want to see him leave. So at a time where the members aren't getting an opportunity to voice their vote, to bring an emergency board meeting to donate $1 million to Governor Newsom, who at this time has brought us into a place where we had PLPs that impacted the membership, that had a hold on raises that impacted the membership. I don't think the timing is correct. And there's a lot of members that did not endorse Gavin Newsom for governor. And I can tell you that I know a lot of membership that are Republicans. And what are we doing to honor and respect their decisions or how they feel? It's not always that we have a political party person that we would want to endorse, as you know. We listen to a lot of political parties, Democrats, and from them presenting their stance is how we make a decision of who we're going to endorse. And it appears from what we see is a membership does not want to endorse Gavin Newsom. That's my opinion, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mary. And yes, I think that is part of the issue that we have at hand right now, right, with the involvement in politics and the whole emergency board meeting. And what is politics, what isn't, is, as Kevin said, or made a point, we're inexplicably linked to politics. Things, an opinion about getting Gavin in or out of office are political, and to a certain degree. And so, can we say we're out of politics ever completely? Maybe the answer is no, maybe the answer is yes, but I would be interested. I think, Richard says what he means and means what he says. And Richard, you have multiple times I've heard you say you were getting out of all politics. And so would you agree with Kevin or disagree with Kevin? And not that this is to start a debate, but the statement, we're going to get his ass out of office, run his ass out of office, is that political or is that not political?
So I'll be very brief because sometimes I talk too much. So I want everyone to talk today. That was my individual comment. And when I made that comment, I was speaking for myself because I'm not the president yet. But, once I become the president, I ran on this platform of not being in politics. So, and to be honest, I've had so many interviews and I can't remember, because I didn't write it down right then, which person I said that to. And some of these people, they were having and just laughing with me, just having an everyday conversation. And sometimes you just say things kind of off the cuff. And they wrote it down. So now people want me to kind of retract it. But that's how I really feel about him. I don't care for Gavin. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys. I'm going to do a live video when we're done here. And so I want everyone to continue to talk. And that way I can keep my mouth shut and I can listen and observe. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. And so it looks like we have Ron's hand up. So go ahead, Ron. Ron, the floor is yours.
I'm muted and talking at the same time.
Oh,
So I missed a bit of that because Steve Alari had called, about this emergency board meeting, trying to garner votes and support for it. And he said a few things that is interesting, that basically that he thought the monies is going to the not to Gavin himself, but to the state council. He says that's the thing and that it's a quid pro quo for us to ask for something in return. So that's how he addressed. I said, "What are we leveraging?" He said, "Well, that's illegal. It's a quid pro for us to ask for something in return for." I asked him, had he looked at your amendments? And he said, well, that's the way they think. But he said, look, we got directors at our work site being asked because of our new incoming president's comments, he's endangering our members. And I said, how? And he said, well, at the CDCR, a director walked over to the DBRA and say, oh, so your union don't support the governor anymore. And he's like, he appoints all of our bosses statewide. And we have to be very careful how we walk, with the governor that, and this is just his comments. So, and he was saying that you can go on. I asked him, have we already given money to Gavin? And he says, look at the money's going to the issues pack regarding the recall itself. We have over $2 million in our fund right now. When I asked, have we given monies? He said we've given $34,000 to him as a candidate, but this won't go to him as a candidate. He said, but go to the Secretary of State website and you can find out how much money we've given him so far. sos.ca.gov, look under campaign and lobbying. And under the search, put in 1,000. But anyway, he was figuring that the statements that you've made, Richard, you have to be very careful that you don't endanger the employees that are hired with the union, because this boss actually walked up on our Deavers and was like, asking them, so what is this thing where, you guys are not, which I don't think that's legal in it of itself for a director to walk over to our Deavers and question anything union wise. So, but it seems like a little muddy water. And I think that before you move on, when you're talking about making a video and things like that, I go back to my original statement in this call, at the genesis of this call. You no longer speak only for yourself. So make sure you're moving forward in some kind of collective, get your feet on the ground, see where we are as members. And hopefully you're establishing a cabinet and advisors and people that can tell you some wisdom, knowledge, and understanding as to how to move forward. And you're not just going on your own impulse and response, because I would have put out a PSA if I were you, or get a publicist, a good writer, and somebody to put out a PSA to all the news outlets, like a congratulatory kind of thing, and say, give us time as a family, as SEIU, as we're transitioning to kind of get our ground. And we'll speak with you sometime in July, late July, August, when I've had time to confer with my board and to kind of put some pieces together. But for you to move so prematurely and have so many definitive statements that will impact us all, I just think you need to tread lightly. And, we are here to support you. And sometimes it may seem, I know that family, one thing we do is we should have these inner squabbles, but when we present ourselves to the public, we should definitely be a unified front. And I just wanted to say that. So.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. The notes from Stephen Alari, who originally proposed or made the proposal. It's a little disingenuous to say the money isn't going to Gavin Newsom, because we understand, I think everyone understands that the money isn't a check being written to Gavin Newsom, but it is being written with the expressed notion that it's going to the council to fight the recall. So, these
right,
are
I was just warning everybody where he
we appreciate you saying what Stephen's message is, but the effect of the money is to go to fighting the recall, which is what we're having a kind of a conversation on. So it's not to be disingenuous or anything like that, but we appreciate Stephen's kind of trying to twist the words around. We're going to let Mary speak next. So Mary.
Hi, thank you again for allowing me the time to speak. I'm just going to go on record and I'm going to say I, because I'm not the Queen of England. That was funny. But Richard Brown won this election on saying what he means and meaning what he says. We all wanted change as a group, and we got change. And I'm excited for the change. And I say, Richard, I support you 100%. I don't want you, because when we represent members with management, they come, like Ron gave the example of the director coming to our members and saying, hey, you don't support Gavin Newsom? Well, no, we don't. and excuse me, I got to do my job. And I think if we push forward and we stand strong and not be bullied by directors or whoever gets hired, we don't want this type of behavior. We're wanting to change a culture. So I say kudos to Richard. I stand behind you, and let's move forward for the change and support you like we all wanted the change to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Were you done? Sorry.
Yes, I was.
Okay,
No.
perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. And so yeah, as we said, so this emergency board meeting, we saw the proposal, we saw the amended proposal. What's coming next is that vote will be on Wednesday. Other amendments possibly can be added. Like I said, if other people had other wording, I know that some people want to talk about splitting that proposal into two and voting twice, one on whether we should support him or not. And I think because more people would kind of want to abstain from that or say like, let's not have a comment, and then a separate vote on whether or not you wanted the $1 million. I personally put my amendment because I'm trying to have a pulse for our union as a whole and kind of see where we're at and how do we come together. And so, like I said, for me, it's less about politics and more about where we are at right now, given we just had an election that became official 2 days ago, given what the voters in that, said, I think that we should kind of stay away from involving in other outside affairs and spend this time to focus on our internal affairs, right? That we all have, getting together, figuring out whether our Richard is the next president, giving him the opportunity to reach out to people and create a new culture, and, whoever's phone's ringing, and clearly, I think everyone on this call wants to be a part of getting the union to a better place, and whatever we got to do to get there. I have a ton of great ideas working with anyone's platform. So no matter who won, I think that I personally can help us move forward, but I haven't called Richard or anything to offer my support, just because I know everyone's calling him, telling him how he needs to act and how he needs to change. And so for me, I'm not going to give that advice to you. I have completely different advice, but if you ever want to call me, you do have my number. If you ever reach out to me as a member and you need help because you really want to move this union forward, I'm here, and I can probably speak for everyone on this call to say that if you really genuinely are trying to make this a better for us as human beings and our fellow human beings, that the 96,000+ that you probably have anyone on this call support, but do it in a sincere manner, as Ron has said. And when you make videos, make your videos, but you could obviously choose to attack everyone on this call, or you can choose not to. And I think that's going to speak a lot to where the direction of our union is headed. And so we are going to start wrapping up. Cindy's hand is up, so we don't want we'll give her the chance right now. Go ahead, Cindy.
Hi, thank you for the summary of that, Robert. Thank you. Two things. One is, yes, I agree with you. I was kind of surprised that Steve Alari actually put that agenda item all in one. Those two, yes, you're correct. They should be separate items completely. There's a difference between actually showing as a board that we support or do not support Newsom, and having funds going to him. That's a totally different thing. So yes, those items should be split into two before the board votes. So if nobody else makes that amendment, I will be requesting it because it should be split. Other than that, the item that I posted in the chat area is the actual link to where you can see the SEIU's political contributions on the Secretary of State's website area. So you can actually see every one of the items, and it's all listed, so you can click on it and go. So it's very helpful to have that link, just so we all know that's the one place we can go to actually see every time a contribution is made, when it's made, how it's filed, and how much money goes to who, what, where, when. Make sense?
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you,
everyone.
Cindy. Yeah, it's important also, as everything kind of has an asterisk to it. Political donations have a few different ones to them. So sometimes it's not completely clear where the money goes, if it's going to a political action committee or a group, and then how are they spending it. So that's something to always keep in mind, is that political spending, although it's required to be tracked, is that it's not always clear. And another thing you want to take into consideration when we talk about the amount of time and effort and support that our union has given Governor Newsom, a lot of that can't be tallied, right? So if we get 100 of our stewards to work on phone banks or go knocking doors to door, that's not money we gave him, but that's time, and time is money, and time and support is money. So those are a few things to kind of keep in mind in evaluating whether we should give a reward of $1 million to someone for cutting our pay.
And so that's where we want to go next, kind of to wrap. There's so many other things we could talk about with this situation, but just procedurally, we want to fill you in that on Wednesday, we'll have a board meeting. It's supposed to be on call, but we're trying to advocate that it switches to Zoom, which is the standard format for these types of things. So we can have, raise hand features and stuff like that. The board will vote on it. So between now and then, whatever your opinion is, either on the original motion, on my amended motion, or whatever other amendments come through, you got to make sure that you advocate to your DLC leadership or board members. So that would also include the vice presidents and all the bargaining chairs on what you think that how they should vote. Because obviously this vote is going to speak, is going to have ripple effects because there are going to be people who are very happy or very upset as a result of this. And so please push your advocacy in whatever way you want to the appropriate leadership that will be voting on this on Wednesday. And then, I know there was a bunch of things we didn't get to cover, but we are reaching 2 hours in regards to this. But where would that $1 million come from? Is it coming from members' money? Is it coming from a separate pot of COPE, which is an opt-in thing, which wouldn't be members' money? If it is coming from COPE, why isn't the COPE committee just acting unilaterally? Why are they bringing it? Why isn't the COPE committee bringing it to the board? Why is it one board member, not the committee itself? Has it been heard? So we know that there's a lot of things that haven't been touched on yet in regards to this, and we're not going to be able to get to all of it, but we will one last time. If anyone has anything else they want to say on any of the 3 issues we talked about today, the election results, our involvement in politics, or this emergency board meeting proper, please go ahead and raise your hand. We'll give a few seconds for that. And it looks like Kevin. So go ahead, Kevin.
I know you're tired of hearing from me. Just clarification. I'm pretty sure he was, but I think Steve Alari is on the COPE committee. But because of the timing, I think he's really has an eye towards the negotiations happening next week, but was still trying to avoid the quid pro quo. So I think Alari is just trying to jump the calendar if he is a member of COPE to do this. But it is kind of essentially coming from COPE if he is a member of that. But you're right, this should come from the COPE committee. And the other thing that's not really was mentioned is that the recall election is not going to be until November. And so we have time as a body, as a Local 1000, to really hash this out a bit more rather than having this rush to judgment. Part of that is from, President-elect Brown's comments. I think that's why Laurie is responding to, not SEIU California, but also this has created a lot of turmoil, a lot of churn in the water, and I think members need to shake out what they really think and how we would go forward. And by the time we decide that, I'll be out of office. So good luck to you all.
And Cindy.
Well, we've covered a lot of information. Sorry I got on late, but I was trying to pull up the data that you had asked me about for the last several contracts. So I went and pulled up since 91. Okay. But anyway, when it comes to all these items, there's going to be a lot of back and forth on all kinds of stuff. Richard, I hope that you get the support you're needing, and I hope you put together a really good transition team so that we can all come together in our efforts, because having the board support you and the members support you is huge. And getting them all on your side in order to get things done is huge. because the more we actually come together and unite to actually help our members, it's going to get us an opportunity to get a lot of stuff done quickly, and that can all benefit to our members. So, and if you guys have known me, I'm very much an advocate for making sure that we have member representation and our contracts are actually effective, that can actually benefit our members. So when it comes to political stuff, everybody's going to have an opinion on that, no matter which way you go. Technically, I was a Republican until Trump came into office, and then was like, oh, hell no, that ain't happening. So I'm now an independent. So anyway, I've always been topic driven more than anything else. I do not do parties, pretty much. I do topics. So when it comes to a lot of our board members, you might find the same thing. They are very much topic driven, unless they, well, they used to be, let's put it that way. They used to be topic driven until they pretty much were handed union leave as a bribe to get them to vote Yvonne's way. And sorry, I will say that straight up. That's what my opinion is on what she's done over the last 10 years on getting her way on actually pretty much any item going in front of the board. So that's kind of my summary of stuff. I hope you guys I hope that we all understand that we're here to fight for our members, and we want our members to actually have a future where they can actually afford to live every day of their lives working for the state and actually be okay.
Thanks, Cindy. Yes, we well said, absolutely. And I think that fundamentally our union is going to change as a result of this election, and whether or not Richard stays in office, whether he gets booted before office, whether he gets recalled the next day, whether we pass this thing or not, I think that at the end of the day, big changes are happening. It just depends on what direction. It's going to be a big positive change or a big negative change, depending on how it's handled. Not too much pressure on your shoulders, Richard, but it is probably one of the biggest, most pressure situations any president-elect has ever had in our local. And there is history to be made, good or bad. And so with that, I think we don't have any other hands up. We've cleared that. But we have someone on the phone, so go ahead, Shirley.
Thank you. Richard, I want to say to you that people are, rather genuinely interested in seeing how you will lead. And now we just have this little pebble in the road. And for you to be successful, there's a lot of people giving you ideas and advice. We would like to heal ourselves. You've had just a taste just a moment ago of the lengths that the prior administration went through to make sure that things went a certain way, essentially buying votes. Richard, you have the potential to lead us really well. So let's take a step back and see if you can get the membership to take the reins of their own personal lives and go to the polls rather than us spending money one way or the other. That way we would perhaps avoid stepping on controversial segments of the union at a time where we're trying to transition. If we lose you now because of this, then perhaps we miss a great opportunity for change. It seems to me, I hear again and again, that people look to you to make change. But how you make it is huge. Like Cindy said, there's a couple of things that she mentioned to you were huge. You're not stupid. I think you know that too. And I just would like to see this issue not leave you with egg on your face, whichever way that you go, and that we make good decisions. I think in the face of our low salary, giving Gavin, as Cindy put it, campaign type money to win his political situation that he's in, the recall. it's like shooting ourselves in the foot. On the other hand, I respect other people's opinion that they do think he's a good leader. Maybe their salaries are higher than mine. I don't know. Either way, to start out in transition with a conflict is hard, not only on the membership, but it must be hard on you too. And I know I've had conversations with people who never expected my words to be repeated, let alone repeated inaccurately. And you're finding yourself in that situation. Take a look at what some of the information is that you're getting from the board and the people that are here on this line, and go forward thoughtfully. You hold your future in your hand. Thank you for letting me speak to you. Bye-bye.
Okay, well, we want to thank everyone who came on the call today, everybody who participated and helped us have a productive conversation to build our union strength. That's what these conversations do. And that's why we come together. And that's why we air our ideas, but with always thinking about solidarity and sticking together in the end, because we all want to help each other and we all want to build each other up. So I'd love it if everybody kept Shop Talk podcast on their radar. Look forward to future episodes. We're going to be definitely checking back in. We'll have an episode following this next board meeting that we've discussed. And if you're ever interested on being on the show or being a part of it, email us at talkshop1000@gmail.com. And thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you later.